Legacy of the Leslie Rotary System. The Leslie Rotary speaker is more than a piece of audio equipment, it's a piece of engineering art that has set iconic musical expression. Born in the 1940s, its swirling Doppler-infused sound became a signature for many artists and producers. Let's dive.
Man at creation, Don Leslie was a young man working as a radio service engineer at a department store in LA that fixed and sold parts for the newly released Hammond organs. He quickly got excited to acquire one, and soon enough he did, although he was disappointed this time.
The Hammond organ arrived, and I thought, oh boy, you can actually have an organ now. It's really, you couldn't have a pipe organ, of course, but this looked like maybe you could have an organ. And I bought a used Hammond organ, one of the very first ones, number 58. And I didn't get any speaker because I knew I could build a speaker, and I couldn't afford the speaker. The payments on that organ were enough. I got the thing home and hooked it up to speakers I'd built and tried the thing, and I was hopelessly disappointed with it. Noticed somehow that pipe organs are big, but the sound changed around in locations and through the pipes, and I felt motion must be a factor here. I decided to phase the speakers, plus half of them and minus on the other, so the cones would move in different directions for the half of them. And suddenly, that sounded different. Then I speeded it up, got it up to tremolo speed, and it sounded wonderful. As the speaker is coming toward you, that of course is increasing the frequency and increasing the volume too at the same time. But what's forgotten is at the same time, there's another wave off of that same speaker going to the wall.
The signature Leslie sound. Leslie systems have directional speaker output rotated around variable speed at a fixed point, creating the rotary effect. Leslie systems can create amplitude modulation AM as a tremolo or vibrato feature, since it rotates with higher intensity at the center, then deviates and diverts away with lower amplitude, creating a dynamic range of amplitude that can be manipulated variably. The higher the amplitude modulation in general, the higher the frequency modulation and vice, true to the distance and speed variables. That characteristic sound feels like an ebb and flow, sounds like a rise and fall, and it is very natural. It can also create frequency modulation, following the principle of the Doppler effect, whereby the frequency pitch of a tone will increase at the center, detuning slightly upwards at its higher amplitude, and decrease in pitch, detune slightly downwards as it moves away from the center and towards the periphery, therefore creating this dynamic pitch variable. Moreover, space modulation became a feature of the Leslie sounds, since the Leslie always takes place within a room. Depending on the confinements of this room, the angular features of it, the grade of substance that makes it, the harmonic ranges are going to fluctuate, harmonic content is going to reflect, and the effects might be due to multiple alterations, creating very distinct features depending on the room it may be played in or recorded in.
God bless the Leslie.
When you kick the Leslie switch, the horn starts spinning right away.
It can lift you up with joy, lift you up out of your seat when it's turned on at the right spot.
There's not an effect alive today that can recreate that 360-degree Doppler of a treble speaker going and a bass woofer moving.
The speaker sits on top of it, and as it spins around, see the baffle's closed off on one side, it just kind of throws the sound around. It's this type of thing.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
The Leslie mechanism. The tube amplifier, usually found at the bottom sector, drives the signal to the crossover middle section, where lower frequencies below 800 Hz are sent via the woofer to the bass bottom drum spinner, and higher frequencies are boosted upwards through a tweeter to the treble top horn rotor. Each rotor is driven by two separate motors, fast and slow, mounted in one package, which makes a total of 4 motors in 2 packages. One that is connected in the middle section that sends through to the lower bottom section, and one that is connected close to the upper section, send it to the horn section. The motors are connected proximate to the rotors via belt drives, which aid the spinning. The main speed variable control is slow or fast, controlling the rotating power of the treble horn and bass speaker. The treble rotor and bass spinner behave like an acoustic projector. The treble rotor, which looks like a double horn, one is operable, the other is just a counterweight for balance, providing symmetrical air drag without eccentric wobble forces. The treble rotor has a high speed response and is largely responsible for the Leslie sound. This is where most of the frequency modulations occurs and are accented. The bass rotor, however, has a slower motion response, creating a characteristic time-pronounced effect when combined with the speed variable of the top rotor, because when you change the speed, usually it takes the bass rotor a longer time frame for it to catch up with the higher responsive top treble rotor. Therefore, it creates a very distinct kind of time-pronounced effect where trebles start spinning faster than the bass, and then the bass kind of catches up, and then if you change the speed again, it creates this kind of very interesting time-pronounced effects.
Wacky applications. Since the Leslie cabinet's volume can cut through too hard in a live stage setting, usually miking goes hand in hand, especially when using only one Leslie. Some players sometimes find solution by stacking multiple Leslies on that stage to drive the sound and play over other instruments like louder instruments like guitar. Most, however, is related to miking solutions application. The lighting solution for the stage often resembles that for the recording studio. Here are some of the most common setups that we found. One common setup uses two mono microphones, one is directed to the chopboard and one is for the no drum spinner. For an overall defined signal, the closer the mics, the stronger the presence, of course. Another popular approach is a triple mic setup that we found that this one is the most popular among producers in general, which is basically places two microphones in an XY type of setup on the treble, sometimes behind the speaker system, sometimes on the front end, and one microphone on the bass rotor. This setup was found to bring the whole character of the instrument and the whole character of the effect in general, so this is why it's particularly used by any performers and min producers.
Just for starting points, and depending on your space, we're lucky we're in a great piano room that has lots of space to move things around. Sometimes one of these might be in a closet or a very limited space where you might have very little space to get your mics up against it, but we have the luxury to do anything we want. But I still want the detail, and I want to hear the spinning rotor on top most times, or the grind, depending what you're using it for. But these things are just magic, and they can add so much to a track emotionally and tension-wise, and just the growl of a great B3 player. So that's probably what I do on the top. All of these are different. So mechanically, you might have some noises. So some of them you may not want to be that close because you're going to hear some of the mechanical pulleys and spinning speakers doing their thing. So also the bottom is interesting and something you got to consider because I'm doing it from the backside, so there's no wind or pop screen. You're likely to get some low end flutter. If you're too close, depending on the cabinet, it may just be fine, but often I'm there. If it's blowing a lot of wind and it's a problem, you could put up a pop screen if you wanted to, or pull it further back. But of course, the further you get back, you're gonna get a little more of the top. And this is when I get into a mix situation or go back into the control room, you'll see here in a little bit, adding that low end in will really color the instrument in a most likely a favorable way. But if it's out of sorts or too heavy-handed, it kind of destroys what you're hearing up top. So again, this would be my starting point just for your basic B3.
The legacy of Rotary sound lives well till today, with the countless emulations digitally and in pedal form. We can see examples like Lister models, new instrument models, Boss, and more. The fact that Leslie speakers took off with zero advertising proves the point that great inventions placed in right hands and right time frame take on their own life.
Initially promoted by radio stations that Don Leslie himself worked for, the sound reached masses via radio broadcast, which in turn streamlined curiosity and created natural demand. Beyond the radio stations that promoted it, major artists and producers took on the sound and worked it to even wider masses and even made hits with it. The artist list includes John Lennon, who's on his vocals, multiple type, David Boomer and Jimi Hendrix, who used versions of the Leslie and the first pedal forms, which was called Univibe. also Billy Preston music with Beastly, and many more.
Another legacy is the business life of the invention, initially rejected by Hammond only to be bought up by the same company 40 years or so later, after Hammond was bought by Suzuki and Leslie was bought by CBS. Suzuki bought up Leslie from CBS, therefore converging, finally marrying the Hammond with the Leslie in a beautiful merger story.
Hope you enjoyed this one. If you subscribe, give it a like, and see you on the next one.